question is, do you agree that Scotland should be an independent country?
For me, the principle that we work best when we work together.
Well, they didn't.
Very serious. The referendum. It seems to me that they're not dealing with the issues.
Hello, this is Scottish Independence podcast number 61, and this one's a little bit different because the guest is someone I can't claim to know or even to have spoken to. However, Ailsa McKay, who recently passed away, was a consultant to the Scottish Government, to the Irish Government, to the United Nations and to the Treasury, and was a reader in gender and economics until appointed Professor of Economics at Glasgow Caledonian University. She was also someone that was recommended to me by no less than 3 people as someone I should try to get onto this programme. So I sent some emails, and I was obviously unaware of the situation. However, I noticed that there was a video of her on YouTube, and it didn't have as many views as I think it deserves, so I thought in order to get it out to a few other people, I might as well put it on here as an MP3 and give people the chance to hear it. So I hope you enjoy it. This was Ailsa McKay speaking at the Radical Independence Conference recently.
Well, I apologise, I'm not a politician, so as an academic I'm probably going to go on a lot longer than 10 minutes, and I've got lots of bits of paper here rather than speaking off the top of my head, so I apologise maybe for not being as entertaining as the previous 2 speakers. But I was asked to comment on hope, and hope for the future in the context of the independence referendum. And as Patrick highlighted, the potential for change is our hope, I think. But for me, the hope rests in our ability to transform our economic institutions, so not just our political institutions, and how we think about the economy. And this is really crucial, I think. And that's what I want to say a little bit about in the next 9 minutes. If we think about the Clinton campaign strapline of the 90s, it's "the economy's stupid," and that was posted all over the campaign offices. And I think the quote from one of our most famous economists, John Maynard Keynes, helps us support that statement. The ideas of economists and political philosophers, both when they are right and when they are wrong, are more powerful than is commonly understood. Indeed, the world is ruled by little else. Practical men who believe themselves to be quite exempt from any intellectual influence are usually the slaves of some defunct economist. So for me, it's not just about the economy, it's about economics, and economics is a discipline. I think, again, a quote, because I'm an academic, I like to support what I'm saying by evidence. A quote from Skidelsky, the biographer of Keynes, recently said, "To understand the crisis in context of the global financial crisis, we need to get beyond the blame game. For at the root of the crisis is not a failure of characters, the big banks, or competence, but a failure of ideas. The present crisis is to a large extent the fruit of the intellectual failure of the economics profession." And I wholeheartedly agree with that quote, and I think that's where we need to have hope in terms of what we transform. So in terms of this morning's theme on failure, I think we can add to that. Economics is a discipline in crisis. As an academic discipline, it is in crisis. Students are not choosing to do economics, they're voting with their feet. And that's because it's not relevant to them, and it's not relevant to the world in which they want to operate in. Is it possible that the economists are wrong? That's me finished. Is it possible that they've always been wrong and they always will be wrong? Is it the case that austerity isn't working? Is it the case that we need to question the economic thinking behind the policy prescriptions that have been raised and put forward in response to the crisis? And it's not only the non-economists who are making those claims. Even those from within the discipline are questioning the prominence that the discipline has had in responding to the crisis. A report offered by Olivier Blanchard, the IMF chief economist, and published in January of this year, highlights forecasters significantly underestimated the increase in unemployment and the decline in domestic demand associated with fiscal consolidation. Like the IMF distanced themselves from that report and said Blanchard was commenting in his academic capacity. I can comment in my academic capacity, but not if I'm the director of the IMF. I don't think you can divorce yourself then from the policy prescriptions of the IMF. So why the faith then in economics, if even the economists are saying we've maybe got it wrong? Or perhaps more crucially, why should we engage with a discipline that's so obviously failing us on a number of counts? And again, I'm drawn to a quote from Joan Robinson, a rather famous female economist, said, crucially, the purpose of studying economics is not to acquire a set of ready-made answers to economic questions, but rather it's to learn how to avoid being deceived by the economists. Now, I'm not going to stand here and support a policy of we all become economists, because then the world would be a really boring place in which we want to live. But I think we need to engage with the discipline, and we need to question the discipline. We need to consistently and constantly question our economists and where they're getting their ideas from. Furthermore, and this is for me crucial, economics is an exclusive discipline. It ignores women completely, and Christina made reference to the fact that women contribute to the economy, and that contribution is ignored. The role that women play in the economy is completely invisible within mainstream economic thinking. Now, this is mainly the result of how the discipline has evolved and the continued dominance of a male perspective in that process. Men continue to dominate the academic discipline, and therefore they understand the world, or economists understand the world in the way they experience it. Sarah mentioned the International Association for Feminist Economists. We're quite a big bunch. We're bigger than maybe the Lib Dem meeting that Christina referred to earlier. But we are relatively lone rangers within our discipline, but we continue to try and change the world, and I'll maybe say a little bit about that in the next 4 minutes that I've got left. Any challenge, though, to the dominant paradigm is a challenge, and this maybe refers to Patrick's point about the exciting time that we have here, the exciting space we have here in Scotland to challenge our political institutions. We also need to challenge our economic institutions and our economic structures and processes that define those institutions. But any challenge to the dominant paradigm is going to be a difficult one, particularly if you're a woman, particularly if you're coming from a gender perspective. And again, I think this quote defines that for me beautifully by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, the first ever feminist economist, although the sociologists have claimed her as theirs. She's not, she was ours. She was an economist. She said in 1888, so absolutely interwoven are our existing concepts of maleness and humanness, so sure are we that men are people and women only females, that the claim of equal weight and dignity in human affairs of the feminine instincts and methods is scouted as absurd. And she concludes that quote by saying, when women suggest that it can be done differently and should be done differently, their proposal is waved aside. They are only women and their ideas are womanish. And that's what happens within economics when us women stand up and say, this discipline is failing us. We are dismissed as only women and we don't understand the numbers. I'm an economist who doesn't do numbers, which again makes me quite a lone ranger in my own discipline. Not because I can't do numbers, but because I refuse to do numbers, because I think we've got the underlying philosophy wrong to start with. So before we start counting things, we need to work out what it is we're trying to count and what we value and what we should value. So the numbers come after that. So in the context of hope, it's perhaps time for a rethink. And is there a space and opportunity to do that in Scotland? I think some of the progress that's been made in Scotland in the last 4 to 5 years, particularly with regard to promoting an equality agenda, is crucial. And if we quote from the Equality Statement published alongside the draft budget in 2012, we recognise here in Scotland that equality is an important driver of growth, and that inequality detracts from our economic performance and our social well-being. We make clear in our economic strategy the importance of increasing participation in the labour market, removing the structural and long-standing barriers which limit opportunities, and harnessing diversity and the wealth of talent we have available to us as a nation. So there's a firm commitment there to promote an equality agenda. But perhaps more crucially, the Scottish Government appear to be currently not ignoring women In September 2012, the First Minister hosted, along with the Scottish Trade Unions Congress, hosted the first ever Women's Employment Summit and highlighted the importance of women's role in the economy and in the Scottish economy in particular, but more crucially, highlighted that our economic models are failing us. We don't know where we're going to go from there, but there's a recognition in Scotland that our economic models are failing us in terms of accepting and counting for the unpaid contribution of women or what they make to the Scottish economy. So in the context of hope, what do we hope for and what makes a good society? If we consider the three defining questions that first-year economics students are given, the standard paradigm of economics: what are we going to do, what are we going to produce, how are we going to produce it and consume it, and for whom are we going to produce it and consume it? If we think about what, this goes back to Patrick's point about the prominence given to economic growth at all costs, improved efficiency as part of that what question. But is that at the expense of greater inequality and an impact, a negative impact on social justice? And if so, then is that growth worth it? And is that growth a goal worth pursuing? And perhaps we need to question that answer to the question of what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? The public sector is viewed as the enemy of economic growth, and the private sector more efficient and more important in promoting that growth. We need to challenge those concepts. We need to challenge the idea that the public sector is viewed as the enemy of economic growth, and the public sector can be the engine of economic growth. We need to move beyond. I'm not a politician. I'm not used to claps. I get students of economics now sleeping at this point. I think the dilemma that the public is bad and the private is good is age-old, and it continues, and we need to uncover that, and we need to make it clear in our political and economic debates. And for whom, I think we need to look again at the purpose of the Scottish Government. The overarching purpose is to promote opportunities for all, and we need to consistently remind ourselves of that. So we need to move beyond the constraining framework that defines our economic system and our economic structures. And we need to begin by making visible the invisible. We should be asking our economic policy-making community to consider the following questions. Whose economy is it, Patrick? Yeah. Who's doing the production? Where is the output coming from? Christina's point about women's contribution to the economy. And what role does the household play in our economic systems? Currently, it's ignored within our mainstream structures and processes. Now, for me, that would facilitate discussion focused on the caring economy, the work-leisure dichotomy, that people are either in work or they're shirkers. As Christina said, they're not. If they're not in work and working in the care economy, but not in the formal economy, they're contributing to the Scottish economy, and that remains invisible. The reproduction and maintenance of the labour force, who does that? Who cares for our labour force, and where is it in our economic system, or how is it counted for? Unpaid work and the motivations for engaging in that work, how do we account for that? And the impact on those motivations are as a result of a continual strival for marketisation or commodification of the labour force. And what are the dominant values in that process? So we need to think big. We need to move beyond those confining parameters and think bigger, and the opportunity exists then for us in Scotland to do that. One such big idea is a citizen's basic income, and one that I wholeheartedly support. Judging by that, many of you are familiar with that concept, but if you're not, Annie Miller's here from the Citizens Income Trust, which is a slightly bigger group perhaps than the feminist economics group that you mentioned, and she can answer any questions you have about the technicalities of a citizen's basic income. But for me, a citizen's basic income provides the basis for creating the space that Patrick refers to rethink our notions of work, income and citizenship rights within modern capitalist economies. The perceived crisis in capitalism and the current economic recession presents us with an opportunity to reshape our thinking about what makes a good society, how do we value people, and who do we value in that society. And here in Scotland, we have the space and opportunity to think big and come up with those ideas. We need to develop a better understanding, though, in doing that, of how the structures and processes associated with our economic systems can better serve the needs of all citizens across all of our communities. And I want to finish there with commenting on, last year I attended an academic conference in Barcelona. It was the annual conference of the International Association for Feminist Economists. And it was a big conference, very big conference. And along with colleagues and many of my friends at that conference, I signed the following statement. We feminist economists gathered in Barcelona on the occasion of the 21st Annual Conference of the International Association, considering that in the last decades neoliberalism has produced multiple crises in different parts of the world, and this global crisis has moved from the periphery to the centre and is now hitting Europe. Reject both the current mainstream explanations of the global crisis and the proposals for resolving it. We reject the economic strategies that continue to skew income and wealth distribution in favour of finance and large capital, while depriving people of necessary care and the means for a sustainable life. We reject an economic system that exploits women's unpaid work to keep the economic system going and relying on them to absorb the dramatic costs of the crisis. For me, that statement highlights the frustration that many of us feel about any opportunities for change. Opportunities for change are being hijacked by the mainstream, in particular the mainstream in economic thinking. And it also highlights how women are continuing to absorb the costs of this crisis in economics due to their location within the paid and unpaid sectors of the economy. However, women are the heart of our local communities, and women are at the heart of our local communities. If we continue to restrict the vital blood supply to that source of economic activity in our local communities, we are in danger of threatening the survival of those communities. So I think the independence referendum presents us all of us here in Scotland, with many opportunities to rethink our economic structures, institutions and processes, and embrace radical reform that will produce better outcomes for us all and not just for a privileged few. And my hope then for today is that here and now we embrace those opportunities and we support change that promotes a more inclusive and a more participatory economics. And thank you for listening.
So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that speech from Ailsa McKay. Just to say, I'll be recording a few other episodes soon, and we'll have them out as soon as possible. And given that what Ailsa was talking about, I think this is probably a fitting tune to finish. So I'll speak to you next time.
Don't you know, they're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, they're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. While they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution. It sounds whisper. Poor people gonna rise up, get their share. Poor people gonna rise up and take what's theirs. Don't you know you better run, 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 run. Oh, I said you better run, 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 run. 'Cause finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about the revolution. 'Cause finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution. Talking about a revolution, while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, about a revolution, oh no. Talking about a revolution, oh no. Talking about a revolution.